Hi everybody, Jodie here from Decoris Vintage Designs, and in today's furniture makeover I'm going to be showing you how to get this really tangy rustic look here behind me. It's quite grungy and I do like a little bit of grunge sometimes. Also, if you like this video today, don't forget to like and subscribe, and everything I use today is listed down below. For this project to be really grungy, I decided to mix drop cloth with sea spray, and I made it very, very textured and gloopy and thick. And then with a brush, I then just stippled it on. So the brush I'm using here today is the Dixie Belle Oval Medium. It's quite a good brush, to be fair, but this for me was an old one, so I wouldn't recommend using a brush that you love when stippling on sea spray because it will ruin it. But this was an old brush that was absolutely fine, and the reason why I used this brush was because I wanted that kind of round texture that the bristles, the shape of the bristles can create. So I stippled this all over the pulls. I just stippled it everywhere really, making sure that I had really, really good coverage and there was barely any wood peeking through at all. And also I made sure that there was thicker clumps in some areas and less sea spray in other areas, just to get different variations of texture. Once the sea spray had dried, I grabbed 3 colours that I wanted to blend. Ignore those pots, they are really, really bad pots. Yeah, I'm messy, you all know this by now. So I gave my piece of furniture a very, very good mist. I wanted it really, really saturated so that these paints would water down as I painted them on, and it would create drips and just lovely stuff like that. And then with a chip brush, I started applying Rusty Nail, which is this gorgeous burnt orange colour with a little bit of browny red in it. And yeah, so I basically applied it to the first drawer. Again, I was painting over the pulls. It was kind of thicker in some areas and thinner in others, similarly to the sea spray because of the water that I had sprayed on. And I was just making sure that I got some really good coverage, and grabbed my rag and started tapping, so then it would create almost like a stony texture. So you don't want a full block of colour when you do a look like this, you want different variations to get it looking authentically rustic. This technique I'm doing here is called ragging, and you can do it with a rag. I really should get a new rag actually, because that was not looking good. I've used that rag so many times now. Yeah, okay, well, let's just say it's extra texture maybe. But basically you can get a rag, you can get an old cloth, which is a rag basically, you know, kitchen towel, newspaper, anything like that. And basically you scrunch it up, and then whatever texture is on that rag or paper basically just acts as a little bit of a stamp, and it transfers that texture over onto your furniture. So I'm also dragging some of the Rusty Nail down onto the second drawer. As you can see, it's a little bit thinner towards the bottom, and I'm mostly doing up and down movements. There are some left and right just to get, you know, make sure that there is a bit of coverage there, but mostly it's up and down movements. And now I am using Terracotta Orange, which then is being blended into the Rusty Nail. I don't want any perfect blending for this because it's not meant to be a perfectly blended piece, but I do just want to soften up some of those edges. So I'm blending it into the Rusty Nail, and this will just create a really nice rustic ombre. I'm I'm centering the terracotta orange more around the middle there, maybe like a sunset, you know, maybe it's like a bit of a sunset or something, you know. And more of the rusty nail around the edges. And again, I've used some water to make sure that it's nice and saturated, and then I grab my rag and I just start tapping again, and you can see here this awesome kind of texture and patterns that it creates. It's just, yeah, I just love it. I think it just can totally transform the way the paintwork looks when you do techniques like this. And just like with the rusty nail, I started dragging it down a little bit onto the next straw, ready for the next blend. Last up is Colonial Mustard, which is a lovely mustard colour, and I am putting this on the bottom drawer and blending that into the terracotta. Doesn't matter as well if there's a little bit of rusty nail at the bottom, you can add a little bit of rusty nail to the bottom. You could even add a little bit of the Colonial Mustard at the top and get different variations of colour that way. And again, I'm using up and down movements with a chip brush. I've used the same chip brush for all of this as well, so yeah, so that I do get different variations. So maybe there's a little bit of rusty nail left on that brush somewhere and it just accidentally, you know, kind of adds to the yellow a little bit, and yeah, it just helps it be more rustic. Next up, I have some Grunge Glaze. I also have a brand new chip brush. I have some Midnight Sky, which is a black with a very strong blue base, and I'm pouring this into a very old, horrible looking cup. Maybe about 50-50 Grunge Glaze and 50-50 to Midnight Sky, and then I added plenty of water, and then I'm just again painting this all over the piece. I'm going to work in sections, and I'm going to work drawer by drawer. So the glaze looks really dark here, but don't worry, I'm not applying the glaze perfectly. It doesn't matter if they're a little bit sort of peeking through, like that's totally fine. But then I just go in and pat and rag again. I realised it was a little bit too dark, so I started spraying some more water on just to loosen it up a little bit, encouraging drips. And yeah, so as it dries, the glaze will actually become more translucent, as will the watered down chalk paint. So it won't look this sort of dark as it dries, but it will just add a bit of age and grunge to this. So I worked the bottom drawers slightly differently. I didn't want to cover up all of that beautiful yellow, so I only applied the glaze mix around the edges, you know, places where it might have become a little bit worn, and mostly just around the outer edges and not the top edge of the drawer. And I'm curving it slightly just around those corners to create a really soft shadow and vignette. And then I come in with my rag again, do the ragging technique, and this will soften it up even more. Once that had all dried, I grabbed some sandpaper. I can't exactly remember what sandpaper grit it was. It was around 100 grit. It was quite gritty, and I just lightly started sanding over some of the sea spray, some of the clumpy areas where the sea spray was. So then I've got some of the original white drop cloth peeking through, and a lot of the texture still peeking through. And again, this is just going to add to that rustic nature of the piece. It's just going to make it look even older and worn, as though it's just had lots of paint layers painted on over time that have started to kind of wear away. I then went in with another chip brush and some Mermaid Tail, which is a lovely green turquoise, and I saturated the furniture again. And as I was painting the Mermaid Tail on around the edges, I was keeping my brush flat and just dragging it down and spritzing with my water mister just to create some nice drips and some, you know, because green is on the opposite side of orange on the colour wheel, it's just going to create some contrast and some drama, making it look just all the more interesting. And what I really loved about this technique is as the paint was dripping, it dripped onto the pulls and settled into some of those details, which I just thought was lovely. So I'm applying clear wax here with a Le Petit brush ready for the black wax, which I'm going to put around the edges. The reason why I've put this on first is just to make sure that the black wax stays nice and soft. It will mix with the clear and it will just kind of keep it nice and subtle, and the clear wax will then protect the piece.
You have to be your biggest fan, and when things are really tough and they're really rough and nothing's working, but there's something inside of you that says, I just have to follow that, because you don't know who you're going to be,
With an artist brush, I then speckled a little bit of bronze gilding wax onto the pulls. Now hopefully you can see all the texture and colours that have really built up on this. They just look really cool. And I just thought I would show you guys the top as well, because you always ask me what I do with my tops. I just want to say the sides for this I painted the same as the front, but with the top I sanded it way down to the grain. And then I went in and I applied the No Pain Gel Stain by Dixie Belle in Colonial Black, which you will see in a moment. I applied the No Pain Gel Stain with a chip brush, first of all, just to get some good coverage on there. Definitely recommend wearing gloves and doing this outside if you can, because it's quite strong smelling, and also I would hate for it to get on your hands. It's a nightmare to get off, and I would worry about it soaking into the skin and things as well, so yeah, just make sure you wear gloves. And then I'm using an applicator pad and rubbing it down. I'm doing this very rustically. I want it to look quite patchy and quite almost smoky, so I'm putting on quite a bit of pressure as I'm pulling down the applicator pad, making sure that some of the grain and wood underneath still peeks through. And here's the finished look, guys. Really hope you enjoyed this tutorial today. Let me know in the comments whether or not you're a fan of grunge, and yeah, whether or not you would like to try a look like this. As always, guys, happy painting and bye bye.